Imagine a time, long, long ago, before the temples of gold were built, before the statues were carved from stone, before the very word Buddha was spoken in the world of men. It was a time of deep spiritual thirst. The world was like a man lost in a desert, desperate for a drop of water. People were born, they aged, they fell sick, they died. And then they did it all over again. Tears. The Buddha would later say that if you collected all the tears you have shed in your journey through samsara, the cycle of wandering, it would be greater than the water in the 4 great oceans. But in this time, 26 centuries ago, in the land of India, there was no one to wipe those tears away. There was no map. There was no medicine for the sickness of the heart. This is the story of that world, the world waiting for the awakening, the land of the rose apple. They called this continent Jambudvipa, the land of the rose apple tree. It was a fierce, beautiful, and unforgiving land. Life here was simple, yet hard, very hard. Most people were farmers. They woke before the sun. They toiled in the mud. They prayed for rain. If the rain came, they ate. If the rain failed, they starved. Fear was their constant companion. Fear of famine. Fear of the kings who took their taxes. Fear of spirits in the forest. And above all, fear of death. To understand the Buddha, we must understand the minds of the people he came to save. What did they believe? When they looked up at the stars, what did they see? They did not see a universe of atoms or galaxies. They saw a cosmic prison, the fire and the caste. For thousands of years, the spiritual life of India was dominated by one group, the Brahmins. They were the priests, the keepers of the sacred texts called the Vedas. They taught a simple, rigid truth. The gods are hungry. If you feed the gods through fire, the gods will feed you with rain, cattle, and sons. It was a religion of transaction, a business deal with the sky. I give to you, O Agni, so you give to me. But the Brahmins taught something else, something that locked society into an iron grip. They taught the system of Varna, the caste. Imagine a ladder, but on this ladder, you cannot climb up. If you were born a servant, you died a servant. If your father cleaned the streets, you cleaned the streets. There was no escape. They said this was the cosmic order. To rebel against your caste was to rebel against the universe itself. But consider this. Does the fire ask the caste of the wood before it burns it? Does the river ask the name of the bather before it washes them? No, nature does not discriminate, but humans do. Deep down, a quiet question was beginning to form in the hearts of the people. Is this it? Is my worth really decided by my birth? Is there no way to be free? The great churning. History was moving. The old ways were cracking. Iron had been discovered. With iron axes, they cleared the thick jungles. With iron plows, they farmed more land. Villages swelled into great cities, Savatthi, Rajagaha, Vesali. With cities came money. With money came greed. The old tribal bonds were breaking. A neighbor was no longer a brother. He was a competitor. And with this new, busy, crowded life, something terrible became more visible. Dukkha, suffering. Let us imagine a man named Datta. Datta is successful. He has moved to the city. He has sold his rice for a high price. But Datta cannot sleep. He looks at his gold and he thinks, someone could steal this. He looks at his beautiful wife and he thinks, one day she will die. He looks at his own hand, noticing the first wrinkle of age, and he thinks, I am fatting. The fire rituals of the Brahmins could bring him cows. They could bring him rain, but they could not bring him peace. They could not stop his hair from turning gray. The religion of the day promised pleasure in heaven after you died. But what about now? What about the burning in the heart right now? The people began to ask, is there a deathlessness that does not depend on the gods? The forest rebels, the SAMANAS. And so, the great renunciation began, not by one man, but by thousands. They were called the Samanas, the wanderers, the strivers. They looked at society, the caste system, the money, the rituals, the wars, and they said, this house is on fire. I must get out. They went into the wild jungle. They were brave. They were fierce. They were like scientists of the spirit. But instead of microscopes, they used their own minds. They were looking for the unconditioned, the thing that does not die. But they were lost, without a Sammasambuddha, a perfectly awakened one to guide them. The wanderers fell into extremes. Some said, you have a permanent soul, an Atman. It is a tiny spark inside your heart. It is eternal. It never changes. You just need to find it. This was the trap of eternalism, Siddhartha. They clung to the idea of self. This is me. This is mine. I am eternal. But the Buddha would later ask, if this soul is you, why can't you control it? Why does it feel pain? Others went to the opposite extreme. They said, there is no soul. There is no karma. There is no consequence. When you die, you rot. You are just earth, water, fire, and air. So do whatever you want. Kill, steal, enjoy. It doesn't matter. This was the trap of annihilationism, Theravada. This was a dangerous teaching. It stripped life of all meaning. It made ethics a joke. And there were those who taught fate. You are like a ball of string thrown down a hill. You will unravel until you are done. You cannot change your destiny. Suffering is fixed. Imagine being sick, entering a pharmacy, and finding 1,000 bottles of medicine. One bottle is labeled poison. One is labeled honey. One is labeled water. But all the labels are written in a language you cannot read. This was the tragedy of the seeker before the Buddha. The urge to be free was there. The effort was there. But the right view, samadhi, was missing. They were churning the water, hopping for butter. But they were only getting mud. The cry of the world Brahma's net. The texts tell us that the very gods were waiting. Even the great Brahma, living in the high heavens, was trapped in the cycle of existence. He lived for eons, but he too would one day die and fall. Even the gods were frightened of the dark. The world was caught in a net, the net of avijja, ignorance, not ignorance of math or geography, but ignorance of the Four Noble Truths. They did not know that life is dukkha, unsatisfactory. They did not know the cause was craving, tanha. They did not know there was a cessation, nirodha. And they certainly did not know the path, magga. Think of your own life for a moment. Think of a time you tried to find happiness in something that changed. A relationship, a job, a new possession. It gave you joy for a moment, and then it changed. It broke, or you changed. That pain you feel, that disappointment, that is the same pain the people of ancient India felt. The human heart hasn't changed in 2,600 years. We all want to be happy. We just don't know how. We are like children licking honey from a razor blade. The conditions were set. The misery was sufficient. The questions had been asked. The stage was prepared. It is said that a Buddha does not appear when people are too happy, for they will not listen. He does not appear when people are in too much pain, for they cannot listen. He appears when the mixture is just right, when the suffering is sharp enough to wake us up, but the mind is clear enough to understand. That time was now. In the Tushita heaven, a deva named Setaketu looked down. He saw the spiritual fire of the age. He saw the mothers weeping for their sons. He saw the ascetics destroying their bodies in the forest. He saw the priests chanting to silent skis. And he said, "It is time." The waiting was over. The wheel of Dharma was about to be set in motion. But first, a child had to be born. Epilogue, a guided reflection for the listener. Before we continue the story in the next episode, let us pause. Sit comfortably. Take a deep breath. Consider the world we just described. A world of confusion. A world where people believed their social status defined their soul. A world where they thought hurting the body would free the mind. Now look at your own life. Are there casts in your mind? Thoughts that tell you, "I am not good enough," or "I am better than them"? Are there rituals you perform? Buying things you don't need, hoping they will bring peace. The world before the Buddha is not just a time in history. It is a state of mind. It is the state of mind whenever we are lost in craving and ignorance. But the path out is coming. May you be well. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. The dream of the white elephant, the wheel of destiny, began to turn not on a battlefield, but in a dream. In the city of Kapilavatthu, Queen Maya, the wife of King Suddhodana, lay sleeping in her royal chamber. The texts tell us she was a woman of exceptional purity, keeping the precepts, gentle in speech and mind. That night she dreamt. 4 great kings lifted her bed and carried her to the Himalayas. There, a magnificent white elephant, holding a white lotus in its trunk, trumpeted 3 times. It walked around her couch and entered her right side. She woke up with a feeling of immense peace. Not pain, but peace. The wise men were summoned. They read the signs in the stars and the silence. They told the king, "O king, rejoice. A son is coming, and he will be no ordinary man. He will be either a universal monarch who rules the world, or a Buddha who saves it." The miracle 80, Elyumbani. It was the month of Vesak, the full moon of May. The heat of the Indian summer was building. But the sal trees in the grove of Lumbini were in full bloom. Queen Maya was traveling to her parents' home, as was the custom. But destiny would not wait for her to arrive. In that quiet grove, standing and holding onto the branch of a sal tree, she gave birth. It is said that the birth of a bodhisattva, a being bound for awakening, is unlike any other. The earth shook gently, not to destroy, but to acknowledge. A light, limitless and bright, surpassed the brilliance of the sun. And then, the moment that has been told for 26 centuries, the newborn child stood firm on the earth. He took 7 steps toward the north. With each step, a lotus flower bloomed to receive his foot. He looked out over the world with eyes clear and fearless, and declared the lion's roar, "I am the chief of the world. I am the best of the world. This is my last birth. There is no more coming into existence." This was not the boasting of a man. It was the promise of a savior. The long night of ignorance was about to end. The tears of the sage. News spread like wind through the mountains. A hermit named Siddhartha, a sage of great power who could see into the past and future, heard the rejoicing of the angels in the sky. He came down from the Himalayas to the palace. The king, proud and happy, brought his newborn son to bow to the holy man. But instead, the holy man rose from his seat. The baby's feet turned to rest on the sage's head. Asita smiled, and then he began to weep. The king was terrified. Is there danger coming to my son? Will he die? Asita wiped his tears and said, "No, O king, I do not cry for the child. I cry for myself. This boy will become the Buddha. He will open the cage of existence. He will teach the way to the deathless. But I am old. By the time he turns the wheel of Dhamma, I will be gone. I will miss the nectar of immortality. That is why I am sad." The prophecy was clear. But King Suddhodana heard only one thing. He might become a Buddha. To the king, this was not a blessing. It was a failure. He wanted an heir, a warrior, a king, not a beggar with a begging bowl. So the father made a plan. He would build a prison so beautiful, the prisoner would never want to leave. The season of lotuses. The prince was named Siddhartha, he who accomplishes the goal. The king commanded, "Let no sign of suffering enter the prince's vision. Let him see no old age, no sickness, no death." 3 palaces were built, one for the winter, warm and cozy, one for the summer, cool and airy, one for the rainy season, sheltered and lush. The prince was surrounded by youth. Only beautiful attendants were allowed near him. If a leaf turned yellow in the garden, it was swept away before he woke up. If a servant fell ill, they were removed instantly. Music played constantly. The air was perfumed with sandalwood. He was married to the beautiful Yashadhara. They had a son, Rahula. He had everything a human being could possibly want. The scriptures describe it in his own words. I was delicate, most delicate. A white sunshade was held over me day and night, so that no cold, heat, dust, grit, or dew might touch me. But you cannot hide the truth forever. The human spirit, deep down, knows that pleasure is not enough. Siddhartha began to feel a strange emptiness. The music started to sound repetitive. The laughter felt hollow. He looked at the high walls of his palace, not as a protection, but as a barrier. He asked his charioteer, Channa, to prepare the carriage. He wanted to see the outside world, the four heavenly MESSNGRS. This is the turning point of human history. The gods, seeing the time was right, arranged for the prince to see the truth. The first sight, aging. As the chariot moved through the city, the crowds were held back. But suddenly, an old man appeared, bent over like a roof beam, leaning on a staff, trembling as he walked, his hair white, his skin wrinkled and spotted. The prince froze. He had never seen such a thing. Channa, what is that? What has he done to be like that? Channa replied, My lord, that is an old man. He has not done anything. That is the way of life. Will I become like that? Will the princess become like that? Yes, my lord, everyone. The king, the queen, you, and I, we cannot escape aging. The prince returned to the palace, his heart heavy. The glamour of youth had faded. The second sight, sickness. On the next journey, he saw a sick man, fallen in his own filth, screaming in pain, helpless. Channa, who is that? That is sickness, my lord. The body is fragile. Health is just a loan. It is not ours to keep. The prince realized, I am sharing this body with the potential for that pain. The third sight, death. On the third journey, he saw a procession. A group of people carrying a stiff, motionless body wrapped in cloth. They were weeping. Channa, what are they doing? That, my lord, is death. That man will never see his family again, and they will never see him. Does this happen only to some people? No, my lord. Death is the end for everyone who is born. The prince was shattered. He looked at the dancing girls in his palace, and they looked like walking skeletons. He looked at the flowers, and he saw them rotting. He asked the silent question, why do we play? Why do we laugh? We are like fish in a pond that is drying up. The fourth sight, the way out. On the fourth journey, he saw something different. A man with a shaved head, wearing a simple robe of saffron. He had no home. He had no money. He had no family. But his face was calm. His eyes were clear. He walked with a dignity that the king did not possess. Who is that? That is an ascetic, my lord. One who has gone forth into the homeless life to find the answer to suffering. At that moment, the seed was watered. The prince knew what he had to do. The great departure. It was the middle of the night. The palace was asleep. The musicians, exhausted, had fallen asleep in awkward positions. Some were snoring. Some were drooling. The prince looked at them. The glamour was gone. The palace felt like a cemetery. He went to the door of his wife's chamber. Yashodhara was sleeping, her hand resting on the head of their baby son, Rahula. The prince stood in the doorway. A terrible battle raged in his heart. If I go in and pick up my son, she will wake up. She will cry, and I will not be able to leave. I love them, but if I stay, I cannot save them. I can only watch them grow old and die. I must go to find the medicine. Then I will come back and heal them. He turned away, not out of lack of love, but out of a greater, boundless love for all beings. He summoned Channa. He mounted his horse, Kanthaka. The gates of the city were heavy, but they opened silently that night. He rode out into the darkness. At the edge of the river Anama, he stopped. He took off his royal jewelry and gave it to Channa. He took his sword and cut off his long, beautiful black hair. He exchanged his silk robes for the rough cloth of a hunter. He looked at the city one last time. I will not enter this city again until I have found the end of suffering. The prince was dead. The Bodhisattva, the seeker, was born. He turned his back on the world of comfort and walked into the forest, alone, into the wild, into the unknown, to find the death of death itself. Epilogue: the silence of the forest. Imagine him there. He has never cooked a meal. He has never slept on the ground. He has never been alone. Now the jungle surrounds him. The tigers roar. The mosquitoes bite. The ground is hard. He has traded a kingdom for a question. Is it possible to be free? He does not know the answer yet. He only knows that he will not stop until he finds it. The search has begun. The teachers of nothingness. The jungle was not a place of peace. It was a place of testing. The former prince, now the ascetic Gautama, walked into a spiritual landscape filled with fierce competition. He first sought out the greatest teachers of the age. He went to Alara Kalama, a master of meditation. Alara taught him to enter a state of deep absorption called the sphere of nothingness. It was a realm of mind so subtle, so vast, that the world disappeared. Gautama mastered it quickly, but when he came out of the trance, he looked around. Anger was still possible, greed was still possible, and death was still waiting. He asked his teacher, "Is this all? Does this lead to the end of suffering?" Alara admitted, "This is as far as I know." Gautama left. He went to another teacher, Adaka Ramapada. Adaka taught him an even higher state, the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception. It was the absolute peak of worldly concentration, a state so refined it could barely be called consciousness at all. Gautama mastered this too, but again, the question burned in his heart: does this destroy the roots of rebirth? The answer was no. It was just a temporary escape. Like a man holding his breath underwater, eventually, he must come up for air. Gautama turned away. He realized that no one could give him the answer. He had to find it himself. The path of pain. If pleasure in the palace did not bring freedom, and mental absorption did not bring freedom, perhaps the answer lay in pain. In ancient India, there was a strong belief: the body is the enemy. They believed that desire is trapped in the flesh, and to free the spirit, you must torture the body. Burn out the defilements, they said. Gautama decided to test this to the extreme. He was joined by 5 other ascetics: Kandana, Bhaddiya, Vapa, Mahanama, and Assaji. They admired his fierce determination. He began the great struggle. It is terrifying to read the accounts of what he did. He clenched his teeth and pressed his tongue against the roof of his mouth, crushing his mind with his mind until sweat poured from his armpits. He held his breath for so long that a roaring noise screamed in his ears, and it felt like a sword was carving through his skull. He stopped eating. He ate only 1 grain of rice a day, then 1 sesame seed, then nothing. The skeleton in the cave, the body of the golden prince, turned black. His beautiful skin became like the bark of a withered tree. His eyes sank deep into his skull, like stones in a deep well. He said, "When I touched my belly, I could feel my backbone. When I touched my backbone, I could feel my belly." He was so weak that when he tried to urinate, he fell over on his face. When he rubbed his limbs, the hair, rotted at the roots, fell out in handfuls. The gods looked down. Some said, "The ascetic Gautama is dead." Others said, "He is not dead, but he is dying." For 6 years, he waged this war. 6 years of hunger, 6 years of silence, 6 years of agony. He did what no man had ever done. But did he find the answer? No, he found only pain. He realized, whatever ascetics have practiced in the past, present, or future, this is the limit. Pain cannot go further than this, and yet I have not attained the noble knowledge. He was at a dead end. The palace was a trap of pleasure. The forest was a trap of pain. Both were failures. He lay there dying, and a thought came to him. There must be another way. The memory of the rose apple tree. In that moment of total exhaustion, a memory surfaced, not from his time as an ascetic, not from his time as a warrior, but from his childhood. He remembered a day when his father was working in the fields. The young boy Siddhartha had been left alone under the shade of a rose apple tree. It was a cool, pleasant afternoon. The boy had sat down, crossed his legs, and naturally, effortlessly, entered a state of peace. It was a joy, But it was not the joy of music or food. It was the joy of seclusion, the joy of a concentrated mind. He asked himself, "Why am I afraid of that pleasure? It has nothing to do with sensual desire. It is born of purity." And the answer came, "I should not be afraid of that pleasure." But he looked at his emaciated body. "I cannot attain that peace with a body this weak." He realized he needed food. The bowl of milk rice, the turning point. A village woman named Sujata had prepared a special offering, rice cooked in milk, intended for a forest spirit. She saw the ascetic Gautama sitting under the tree. He looked so majestic, despite his thinness, that she thought he was the spirit himself. She offered him the golden bowl. "Lord, may your wishes be fulfilled, just as mine have been." Gautama accepted. He ate. Strength returned to his body. The blood began to flow. The mind cleared. But his 5 companions were watching. When they saw him eating solid food, they were disgusted. "The ascetic Gautama has given up," they sneered. "He has reverted to luxury. He has failed." They turned their backs on him and left. Good. He needed to be alone. The final battle was not to be fought with an army or even with friends. It was a battle to be fought in the solitude of the heart, the seat of victory. It was the full moon of May again. 35 years had passed since his birth. He walked to a spot near the river Naranjara. There stood a great Pāli tree, the tree we now call the Bodhi Tree. He met a grass cutter named Satya, who gave him 8 handfuls of kusa grass. Gautama arranged the grass at the base of the tree to make a seat. He sat down facing the east. The sun was setting. The moon was rising. The air was thick with destiny. He made a vow that shook the earth. "Let my skin, sinews, and bones dry up. Let my flesh and blood dissolve. I will not move from this seat until I have attained the supreme, perfect awakening." He closed his eyes. The darkness gathered. Mara, the lord of illusion, the king of death, knew that his time was up. He summoned his armies. The man under the tree was no longer searching. He was ready to find. Epilogue: the longest night. Night falls over the forest. This is not just a man sitting under a tree. This is the human spirit facing its own demons. Fear, desire, doubt, memories. They are all coming for him. If he moves, we remain lost in the dark forever. If he stays, the sun will rise on a new world. The battle for the mind has begun. The assault of Mara. The sun had set. The forest was wrapped in a silence so deep it felt like the breath of the universe had stopped. But inside the mind of the man under the tree, a storm was breaking. Mara, the tempter, did not come with swords of steel. He came with weapons of the mind. He whispered, "You are not ready. You are a prince, not a sage. Go back to your palace. Go back to your son." When doubts did not work, Mara unleashed fear. The scriptures tell of a terrifying army. demons with 1,000 faces, storms of wind that tore up mountain peaks, rain of boiling mud, darkness deeper than the deepest cave. It was the mind screaming against its own liberation. Every fear you have ever felt, fear of failure, fear of death, fear of nothingness, attacked him all at once. But the Bodhisattva sat immovable. He did not fight back. He did not hate them. He simply watched them. And because he had no fear, the weapons hurled at him turned into flowers before they touched his skin. The boiling mud turned into sandalwood powder. The darkness turned into light. Mara, defeated by peace, tried one last trick. He challenged the Bodhisattva's right to sit there. Who are you to seek freedom? Who is your witness? I have my army to witness my power. But you are alone. The earth witness. The man under the tree moved one hand. He moved his right hand from his lap and touched the ground, fingertips grazing the cool earth. He said, "This earth is my witness. For lifetimes, I have given my blood, my eyes, my flesh, and my wealth for the sake of others. The earth knows me." It is said that the great earth roared in response. It was a roar of truth. Mara, the ego, the shadow, could not stand against the weight of that truth. He vanished like a drop of water on a hot iron. The battle was over. The king of death was defeated. Now the real work could begin. The first watch, the river of time. The night deepened. It was the first watch from sunset until 10 o'clock. The mind of the Bodhisattva, clear as a polished diamond, turned backward. He began to remember, not just yesterday, not just childhood, but one life back, 10 lives back, 100, 1,000, 100,000. There I was named this. I ate this food. I felt this pain. I died there and was born here. He saw the ocean of time. He saw that he had been a king, a beggar, an animal, a god. He had been a mother weeping for a child, and a child weeping for a mother. He saw that death was not an end, but a revolving door, and he saw the tears, an endless ocean of tears shed in the cycle of birth and death. The illusion of I am this body shattered. He was not a body. He was a traveler who had been walking for eons. The second watch, the law of Karma. The night moved to the second watch from 10 until 2 in the morning. He opened the divine eye. He looked out at the universe. He saw beings disappearing from one world and appearing in another. He saw the rich becoming poor, the beautiful becoming ugly, the powerful becoming weak. Why? He saw the invisible threads connecting it all. Karma, action. Those who acted with kindness and wisdom rose. Those who acted with cruelty and greed fell. It was not a judge in the sky punishing them. It was their own choices. Like a cartwheel following the foot of the ox, suffering followed the bad deed. Peace followed the good deed. He understood. We are the heirs of our actions. We are the architects of our own pain. The third watch, the end of the builder. The night entered the third watch from 2 in the morning until dawn. The final veil remained, the deepest root. Why do we act? Why do we choose pain? He looked deep into the core of the mind and found the answer. Avijja, ignorance. Because we do not see, we crave. Because we crave, we cling. Because we cling, we become. Because we become, we suffer. He saw the machine of existence, the 12 links of dependent origination, forward and backward. When this is, that is. When this ceases, that ceases. He took the sword of wisdom and cut the root. Ignorance cut, craving cut, clinging cut. At that moment, the prison walls collapsed. The stars overhead seemed to stop. The fire that had been burning for eons went out. He looked up. The morning star, Venus, was rising in the east, but the man who looked at it was no longer Siddhartha. He was no longer a prince. He was no longer a seeker. He breathed out a verse of triumph, a song of victory that still echoes in the hearts of the wise. Through many births I wandered in samsara, seeking, but not finding, the builder of this house. Painful is birth again and again. O house builder, you are seen. You shall build no house again. All your rafters are broken. Your ridgepole is shattered. My mind has reached the unconditioned. I have attained the destruction of craving, the silence of the Buddha. The sun rose. The birds sang, unaware that the history of the universe had changed. The Buddha sat in the bliss of release for 7 days. He touched freedom. He drank the nectar of immortality. But then a thought arose. This Dhamma I have found is deep. It is subtle. It goes against the stream. People are addicted to their attachments. They love their chains. If I teach this, they will not understand. It will only be weariness for me. The Buddha inclined his mind towards silence. He decided not to teach. The invitation, the universe trembled. If the Buddha remained silent, the light would go out forever. The great god Brahma Sahampati, seeing the danger, descended from the highest heaven in the blink of an eye. He knelt before the Buddha, bringing his palms together. Lord, please teach the Dhamma. There are beings with only a little dust in their eyes. They are perishing because they do not hear the truth. If you teach them, they will understand. The Buddha looked at the world with his eye of pity. He saw people like lotuses in a pond. Some were buried deep in the mud. Some were resting on the surface. But some were rising out of the water, ready to bloom if only the sun would touch them. For the sake of those few, the Buddha accepted. He turned to Brahma and said, "Open are the doors to the deathless. Let those with ears release their faith." He stood up. He took his bowl and his robe. The wandering was over. The mission had begun. He turned his feet toward the city of Benares. The world before the Buddha had ended. The era of Dhamma had begun.